Hey guys, this is What If Deku Was a Navi or Avatar, Part 1. Now, after this What If, I am going to be jumping off of What Ifs for a little while, unless you guys ask me to make one or two. But I'm going to be jumping off of What Ifs a little while, since I did tell you guys earlier this month that I am going to be changing up my upload schedule and also basically stuff I upload in general to try to make videos that I actually enjoy making. I like making waves, but I don't see myself making them every day and making a living off of this. So let's just dive right into this fan fiction. What if Deku was a Navi / Avatar? Now, the story in the world this takes place is going to be very different, and it's going to be about a 4-part series. It's going to end off about maybe 5 parts. It'll be a 5-part series. Now, what happened is we could switch to the reality and the timeline and universe of this world. As in this world, Pandora would exist, including all other alien species as well. Some alien species. Now, on Earth's environment would have been drastically changed because we switched about a couple 5,000 years later in the future, in the canon time of My Hero Academia where it took place. So basically 5,000 years in the future, all the original cast of My Hero Academia would have been born about 5,000 years later than their original births, meaning that some of the earlier heroes would have been born 30 to 40 years, in the past, basically stuff like that, so they would grow up, be heroes, and then the next generation of heroes would have came in. Quirks would start to pop into the world way later into the society, already Earth being a dying world, as Earth's ecosystem would have been destroyed so badly that forests, jungles, and just overall the woods, everything, forests, jungles, trees, pretty much 50% of the whole population would have never even seen a tree in person before, making Earth basically the worst planet to live on. It solely being overtaken by technology, gas, electricity, and all sorts of other things, making it unsustainable for Earth because Earth was running out of oxygen and they weren't able to make any, oxygen or plants because the soil they made artificial never worked, and also they didn't have any soil left because every inch of the planet was either covered in water that was already polluted or covered in steel or concrete. There was no grass or anything. It was literally no wildlife and animals like wolves, pigs, cows, basically animals we need to survive or eat off of would have died and perished because of the pure lack of just wildlife and where they can live. Zoos would have had nothing but artificial grass, food, and all sorts of other things, but the animals would have just been there for livestock, and since none of them had the willpower to even reproduce, it was nothing for them to do. Earth was dying very fast, and they needed to find another planet. And majority of Earthlings, adults, couldn't really focus more on the story. So they took about 5 million to 4 million people on Earth. Actually, technically about like 2 million to 1 million, probably 3 million people, and put them in a ship, multiple different ships, to do a project and save the next line of humanity. Some of them were pregnant, some of them were children. The majority of the children had to be pretty much cared for their flight there to their new planet, Pandora. As scientists would have found out, Pandora was a sustainable planet that had natural resources and wildlife they can eat. But they had to be careful because Pandora had natives there. They also had very toxic air that they can also overcome if new lifeline and new legacy would have been born there. As we could switch to Deku years later as he's told this story by his adopted father, as Inko walks into their room or pretty much tent. Now, it's not really a tent, it's more, the tubes or the middle little containment units in Avatar where Jake avatared or pretty much linked up to his avatar, and it was on the side of the forest, and then the colonel showed up and blew it all down, and also Jake had to be, transported to his avatar body, his soul, permanently. Basically, so like that type of ship or middle tube or platform, they would have been living in that type of situation or that type of platform majority of all of the inhabitants, as Deku's about 14 to 15 at this time. As we get told that, well, humans were brought to Pandora to live here and co-inhabit with, well, the Navi. But years later, Earthlings survived on Earth. They came back, and they felt like we were keeping to ourselves too much, and we take our new planet. As more and more humans came to Earth, and eventually we were just divided into two. Humans fighting for the Navi, and humans fighting to kill and, well, overtake Pandora in itself. As, well, Deku would have been a part of that project, that program. The humans that were sent there years ago were brought over to this new line of, well, humanity. As years had gone by, decades, as half of Pandora would have belonged to Earthlings, or humans. But only a small percentage, because Pandora in this world is about thousands of times bigger than Earth. As if it is simple, they weren't really making much of any progress. As they would have started to think more and more about how the Navi are starting to fight back. It's been years and they're starting to fight back fast. They're starting to hit us at key points. They're becoming smarter. As pretty much when the doctors in the room say that they already were smart. They're smarter than us. They have the same cognitive abilities of humans. They're stronger, faster, and probably smarter than us. They have the right technology and thinking and teaching. They could be better than humans itself. They already are. As the general there would have been this version's endeavor, as quirks would have also been still a thing in this world, as only the newer generation of humans on Pandora would have exhibited superhuman abilities, as Deku would be one of the superhumans that were never born with powers. Inka was born with the ability of telekinesis, and not like a weak perversion of telekinesis like she had in canon, like actual full-on telekinesis like Mob, as she would have tried to train Deku from a young age, trying to focus him and trying to push him into having powers, but him never exhibiting or growing any powers in the future, them losing hope in Deku. As Deku would have grew up with the other children, being tormented and bullied against because of, well, his lack of abilities, as humanity would have become stronger very fast. As some humans would have had extraordinary abilities, some humans would have just had the ability to breathe and live on Pandora by themselves without any technology, and some humans just were born with no powers, even if they were a new generation of children, a new generation. As Deku would have been, well, discriminated against, and his mother deep down inside would have thought Deku was a disappointment, as the general would have been Deku's uncle. Well, pretty much Deku's adopted uncle, Deku's adopted father's brother, as he would have thought Deku as a nephew, because Deku was sweet, he was caring, and, well, Deku's adopted father was actually there for his birth. Deku's real father died before Inko could give birth to him on Pandora, the first couple 15 to 14 years on Pandora. As Deku would have grown up seeing this, him not really knowing he's adopted, or his stepfather, he never really knew that his stepfather was actually not his, well, biological father. He was always told that he was his biological father because his mother didn't want him to feel different and feel weird, that his father, the person that's been raising him all these years, isn't really his actual biological blood father. But he's still his father, though. I'm pretty sure you're still your father. You're still their child, even if they're not your blood child. Because if they raised you since you were born and taught you and you believed they were your blood father all these years, aren't they your real father? But basically what would happen is, well, Deku would have grown up. Deku would be around 16 now. Years would have gone by. As, well, the main group of characters, basic majority of half of these new Navi, would have been taking roles or be different universe versions or doppelgangers of characters like Inko, Momo, and all sorts of other Navi. Basically, Class 1A, Class 1B, and basically all My Hero Academia characters have been split in two as humans and Navi. As we would see that Deku would have been a part of the science project to try to co-inhabit with the Navi and trying to make them stand down so they can get this middle and materials they need to make a new type of Earth section or humanity on Pandora to make themselves sustainable. But pretty much the Navi didn't want that. They didn't want anything that humans could give them. Medicine, technology, they didn't need it at all. They lived thousands of years without any disruption and with no help. They needed no help. They lived as best as they could, and best as they will. They were at peace until humanity came. As it would be a side of Navi that wanted to help and wanted to understand humans and wanted to, well, be a part of their world, wanted to be friends with them. Another side of Navi, more the older Navi, would have wanted to kill all the humans, wanted to send them back to Earth, wanted to stop them. But in this canon, Earth would have been somewhere on the brink of death, as it would only be another planet called Koro that was similar to Earth, but the temperatures were constantly spiking, being unpredictable. It could be a stormy day the next day and a sunny, not cloudy at all day. It could be winter one day and it can be summer the next 2 hours. Basically, the weather on that planet was undetainable. The weather on that planet was constantly shifting and changing. The sun was going in and out in multiple different ways. It was never day or it was never nighttime or daytime. It was always just the planet. It was never a time where the sun was on the complete other side of the earth. The sun moved thousands of times faster and actually moved around the planet. As the planet would have stayed missionary and just, it was stood there just orbiting, or if the sun would have been orbiting around the planet. But the pit is simple. Well, that planet would have been out of the pretty much works because they were trying to co-inhabit that planet, but they thought that Pandora was a better suited planet for humans to co-inhabit with. As well, we see that Deku was a part of the new project, and he is given an avatar body, as he's told by pretty much his mother that you could be a part of this project, just not to get too attached to the Navi. As Deku says, I understand, as pretty much he would have gotten into working with this universe's version of Grace. This version of Grace would have been a doppelganger version of Bakugo's mother. Bakugo's mother being this universe's version of Grace, but also still being Bakugo's mother in canon, or in this universe. As Bakugo and Deku would have had a type of rivalry, but them still hating each other, or Bakugo hating Deku a lot for just being different, just being weak, being like normal humans were thousands, hundreds of years ago. As you would have despised Deku. As pretty much, the story would have gone on, as they would have done experiments, they also would have done science and trying to learn about Pandora and trying to, talk to, humans entirely, as eventually it would have led to Deku going on a little bit of a trip with Grace and Bakugo, as they would have been about 16 at this time, like I said earlier, as they would have gone with their mother, or would have gone with Katsuki Bakugo, as they would have, gone on a ship being flown and escorted there, basically it being Navi bodies still for humanity, as they would still make avatar-like bodies and other things like that. As Grace would have gone there in her avatar body, escorted by her son that didn't want an avatar body because, it was too expensive, and also he just wanted to stick with his guns, his quirks, his powers, as he would have walked across the forest with his mother, backing her up with a gun in his hand, basically them being pretty much decked out with ops type training gear, as Deku would have already knew how to work a gun and being pretty precise with it, him putting the majority of all of his time in science, combat training, boxing, and also shooting in armed range or archery, as he would have been very much skilled in literally any type of form of defense and also science, as he would have been walking around basically looking at Pandora, as he's never been out of the inner walls of the restricted area where majority of the humans lived on Pandora, as he never noticed how beautiful Pandora really was. As he would start to look around, as he would start to touch the same type of plants Jake touched in the original movie, as he would have touched them going into themselves or collapsing, as he would have started to touch more of them being fascinated by it, but eventually being stopped. As he would have looked around, as he would have looked closer, as he would have been hit with a huge, bolt of lightning, as he would have been hit down to the ground, as it would have been Denki Kaminari, as a Navi. As in this world, Navi would have actually inhibited powers. Only 1% of them, though. 5 to 6 of them in each tribe would have only had some sort of superhuman ability, but could only be used once a day, their bodies being overloaded by this ability. Denki being able to disperse electricity he made from his body, only about 3 to 4 times a day, as he would have shot one blast of energy towards Deku, landing him on his freaking back, just literally laying him flat. As Deku would have gotten up, as he would have looked around, as he would have seen pretty much Denki about to get off a tree, but him being stopped when he saw a huge black-like creature crawling out of the forest, as he would have looked dead at Deku. As Denki would have smirked, saying in Navi, "My work here is done. I don't need to kill you myself," as he jumps off the trees somewhere else, as the animal literally starts to run right towards him. As Katsuki sees this, as Bakugo tells him to run, as Deku books it, as he just beelines it, as pretty much Katsuki and Bakugo start to run off, as they get into the pretty much helicopter and they book it, or they pretty much dip out of there. As Deku was running from this pretty much mammoth of the creature, he starts to running into a tree, and also just doing the same type of maneuver and route Jake did in the original movie, as he would eventually jump over a cliffside into a river, or a waterfall, as he would have fell in there, as he would have clawed himself out, basically getting on the side of the jungle. As he would have looked at the creature, it being still on the side of the cliffside Deku jumped off of, it roaring at him and turning back. As he would have walked off, him being very much confused and pretty much scared, because he never saw one of the Navi-like creatures in real life. He never even saw an actual Navi in real life, other than avatar bodies. As he would start to walk around, as he would eventually start to black out, as he would start to freak out, him coughing up blue liquid, and also his body starting to shift and change and rumble, and his bones starting to crack, as he would have yelled in pain, him passing out, as he would have woken up 7 feet tall, with blue skin, and still green hair actually, as it would have been a lot more of a darker green, but still green if you look close enough, as he would have had some sort of weird ponytail in the back of his head with some sort of weird freaky pink hair coming out of it, as he would have looked around, as he would have noticed something going on, as he would have been very much confused on what was going on, as he would have looked into a puddle of water, him seeing himself glowing with pretty much bioluminescent dots of light from his body, as he would have turned into a Navi. Uskin explained about his quirk by a narrator, as his quirk would have been transformation, as if he breathed the same air as a creature, or pretty much consumed their blood or their DNA of any sorts, or even came in 7 feet closer to them after a stressful situation, he would have turned into the last creature he ever saw, or the last creature he remembers seeing by himself. As the last creature he remembers vividly seeing was Denki, as he would have dipped, it being a blonde-haired Navi being very rare, as he would have ran from the black creature, but him running so fast that he didn't even notice it was behind him. Or he didn't even notice or care to look back. So all he saw, last thing he remembers seeing, was a Navi, as he transformed into the Navi. As his quirk was very more delicate, as it was basically just shape-shifting into things he saw or ever, pretty much ate or, breathed the same air as it. If it breathed, a certain type of air. As Deku can transform or shapeshift into any creature with the same mental capacity of himself, or higher capacity of himself. But any creature with low or basically no intelligence, he cannot transform into that. So if he transformed into, let's say, a mouse, or he can't transform into a mouse or a rabbit. What happened is, Deku would have started to walk around being used to his new Navi body, as Deku just yet did not know how to change back. As we were shown that his quirk is random. He can never figure out if he's going to change back or shift into something. It being constantly randomized as his genes and cells would have been changed left and right. As eventually he would have walked around getting used to his Navi body, jumping the tree to tree, but with his newfound abilities in shape-shifting, he would have actually shape-shifted into the peak physical form a Navi can possibly reach. Him being faster, stronger, more durable than a normal Navi. Him being able to jump miles, and him being able to crawl up trees with relative ease, his senses being off the charts, and him basically being a whole daredevil through the jungle, jumping the tree to tree, eventually it becoming nighttime. As Deku would have grabbed and took off his shirt, as he would have still been covered by pretty much some of his gear, as he would have still had his gun with him, surprisingly, him grabbing a nearby stick, using his knife to basically sharpen it, taking his shirt around it, covering it in some sort of liquid or glue of some sorts from a plant, as he would have turned it on fire or cut it on fire, as he would have started to walk around the jungle. Or he would have seen the same type of creature he saw earlier, but puppies of the creature. As he would have looked at it closer, as it would have charged at him. Basically, younger, hyena-like of those creatures would have started to circle around Deku, because Deku would have started to blast a cap at all of them, just straight up unloading his whole gun. Because eventually he would have run out of bullets or ammo, throwing his gun into the water, him being out of ammo entirely, as he would have started to kick and pretty much jab and stab these hyena-like creatures, so eventually being overpowered, but eventually being saved by a black-haired Navi with some sort of, power, as she would have started to shoot arrows left and right, eventually her bow being broken by some sort of, one of the hyena creatures, as she would have kicked it back, as she would have summoned or literally grew a whole other bow from her hand, grabbing it in the air, as it would have popped out of her hand like a freaking, like a card trick, as she would have grabbed it in the air and basically summoning 2 more arrows from her back, literally just grabbing her back, and then arrows just appeared in her hands, pulling arrows out of her back, as she would have started to just straight up take out all of these creatures, eventually mercifully killing one of them, as she would have looked at, Deku, saying, "Idiot, child," as she would have grabbed his spear or his torch, thrown it in the water, as he would have said, no, what are you doing? As he would have looked at her saying, "So, you're a native," as she would have looked at him, as she would have said, "Yes." He's saying, you speak English?" As she would have said, "Yes, go back to your home now." As Deku says, "I don't know where my home is. I'm lost." And she says, "I can't help you." As she walks off, as Deku stops her and asking, "Can you help me, please?" As she looks at him, as she sees something in him, something she can't explain, as she tells him to follow her, as he is kind of excited, as Deku follows her, as they go through the jungle, eventually coming across spirits, as all the spirits would start to gather around Deku, showing him some sort of love, basically making him the chosen one, as she would have looked at him saying, as she would have told him to come with her, as he would have started to walk on the forest, jumping the tree to tree, eventually getting stopped by a Navi on, some sort of horse-like creatures, as he would have been stopped, as he would have been captured or put into a prisoner, as they would have started to, ask questions. He's a human. He has 5 fingers. He's a false body. As pretty much bit simple, well, Deku did transform into an avatar because majority of all of his transformations aren't going to be exactly like his original transformation he's trying to shapeshift into. It's going to be a mixture of his DNA into that creature. So if Deku transformed into a woman, that woman would, every transformation he would probably have green hair or green eyes. As Deku's Navi form would have actually had green eyes, and the regular of all Navis have yellow eyes, but he would have had green eyes and greenish, darkish hair. Hair that was obviously green in the light, but in the dark it looked black. But it was also very big and puffy like Deku, or big and messy like Deku's original hair in canon, or in, well, anime. As Deku would have been told by the chief, or been looked at by the chief, basically them talking, eventually them coming to a closing point, saying that, I guess it's time for us to show him our ways. As they talk, and we are told that what's going to happen is they're going to teach Deku their ways, how they do this, and it may be a way for the Navi to make peace with humanity and to have them leave Pandora. As the chief would have had this dream to have Deku be the bridge between Navi and humanity and tell the humans to leave the rest of Pandora alone, as he would have known from some of his, pretty much apprentices, that Earth or Earthlings or humans are terraforming other parts of Pandora and even starting to go into the water regions, as he would have told them that they keep an eye on humans, as they have one of their own, as if anything goes south, the chief would most likely kill Deku or have him for leverage for them to stop, as they were one of his own. As we get hit with Deku going on a little bit of a journey with Momo, or this version of Nari, as we get switched with the end of the series. Now, sorry guys, this is pretty short because I'm just trying to get this video out here, but this is part 0. Now, part 1 will be a lot more action-packed and will actually be a lot more better. Now, if you guys don't like this little draft, because it's a draft, this isn't the real series just yet, but this is a draft, so should I just do like a normal story, like some of the heroes are switched to Pandora and they're in an avatar program, or should I keep this type of story design? Because this is just a draft. This is at part 0, so I hope you guys enjoy this little draft, and tell me guys if you want a part 2 or technically a part 1 of real introduction into the series. If you guys enjoy the video, hope you guys like and subscribe. As always guys, have a blessed day, and please subscribe. If you see a lot of you aren't subscribed, please subscribe guys. I need the support. Thanks.